I figured I would record my work process. This is less of a lecture video and more of just kind of almost like a live stream. So basically what I'm thinking is I should make a front end for this, but I don't want to make a front end that calls Claude because then we have to use API fees. I want to make a front end that lets me navigate all of my work here, right? Because I can take scripts and I can take them and turn them into, full animations. And I want to be able to, have my workflow to create these animations, but have it where it's much more organized and cleaner, kind of like how there's a front end for when my animations are done and I can look at them and look through them. But, something a little bit cleaner there. And I found a couple GitHub repos that already do that. Cloud CLI, Claude Code Web, and Opcode do similar things, but they're not really doing everything that I wanted. So I went ahead and created a large PRD, right, product requirements document, that describes it to Claude Code, so it always knows where we are, right? Hey, here's the repos that I was talking about. Here's the stacks that those repos have. You can have Claude create these PRDs for you as well. And kind of like what I liked about them, but what I wanted to cut, right? We want to get rid of most of the front ends on these other repos because at the end of the day, I don't know. I wasn't vibing with them, I guess is the question. I don't know. I'm sure I have it. Here we go. Yeah. They weren't fitting what I wanted. They didn't look, I don't know. This isn't my workflow. I'd rather just sit and work inside of VS Code in the folders instead of use these types of front ends. This one was okay, but I didn't need all this crazy choice. I didn't need Anthropic and all these things. I wanted something for me in my area, and I'll make it modular later. But they had a lot of really good ideas inside of this, as well as like the way they were doing things. So that's kind of what I was going to kind of build and look at here. So the first thing I did is I'm inside this workspace because this has a lot of the information and processes. So I built a new folder that says front end, right? And so that way, I have my stuff is already all here that I can reference later, or I can have Claude go run and grab as context easier without me having to upload it. But I just dropped my PRD in here and it went through and described it, right? Here's what the workspace looks like. I'm thinking this is a pretty good architecture. I went through and edited a little bit because I had Claude generate a lot of this, but I was thinking about, okay, I want a workflow map as well. So we create like nodes and stuff. And have you ever seen like mind maps and web maps where you can look through? Well, I want a similar thing, but in that thing, be able to edit these folders. So like I start at script lab, I create a short form script, right? And I get all these different scripts. Then that moves into my animation studio, and my animation studio creates all sorts of things and processes, right? And goes through a workflow where I go into a spec and I build that, and then that turns into a render, which is then, something that I can actually, build, so to speak, or look at the animations from. And so that's something I want to map visually rather than just stare at, a folder structure. And this is great. It organizes it well, but I think it could be even better. And so that's kind of what I want to do with all of this. Maybe even have a chat, right? Just a panel right there that you see much similar to this. And again, we're relying on Claude Code's infrastructure. We're not creating a separate app. We're not using anything, doing anything craziness. We're just making something better, a better interface for how I want to work with Claude Code. Now we've got the idea of a panel, right? So it's like, okay, I want to have maybe my workflow map on the left, file editor in the middle, and Claude Code on the right. And being able to open multiple chats is going to be super important there. And being able to collapse them. And again, this is why it's important to do a PRD, because you can lay all this out and edit it. If you didn't like this, you don't want Claude to just run out and start building stuff. You want it to be right from the get-go, and then it expands on what you like. So I'm going to look at pipeline definitions. I'm going to look at okay, here is probably what has worked well in the past. Here's the root paths. So this is built off of my actual workflow here. And this is a JavaScript. You don't necessarily need to write it like this. You could write it where it looks something more like Claude Code, right? Like, hey, to write a script, I'm in this folder. To learn script structure, go to this folder. That's another way you could do that. However, if we're going to put it in a front end, we're actually going to need some sort of front end style image or code, React or anything like that. But JavaScript is a really common one that everyone uses. And again, you can ask Claude to build something like this. And I'm going to be making more courses that dive deeper into what JavaScript is, what Python is, like how do you read this. But at the end of the day, you'll start to learn that all programming languages are roughly the same. They have some sort of definition, and then they have a description for that definition. And then that description and definition can be paired with others, which are then sent to other descriptions and definitions so that you can then look at stuff. It's the same thing here, right? You have a folder, and in that folder, you have definitions, right? So you have a description of what should be in there, and then you have things that work inside of that folder. This is the same thing here, but written out programmatically. Very simplifying a lot of this, but that's kind of the idea here. I'm also giving the idea of like what I want. I want to be able to click nodes. I want to be able to click sub stuff. So instead of me just clicking like this, the same exact thing's happening, but it's like a really pretty, visual design or something like that. And I'm going to keep it clean and minimal. Matrix, maybe? No, I don't know if I want to add matrix. So anything I add here is what it's going to be for. I want to think more about my visual style, honestly, but I think it's good where it is. And after that, it's just simple things like that. Here's the steps that I want you to take, right? Make sure you're removing all these features. The first thing we're going to do is actually look at and clone these repos. So when I say clone a repo, that means literally downloading someone else's code or GitHub. And again, I'm making videos on what GitHub is, what Git is as well. So keep an eye out for those. But someone already did a lot of work and then they put it up on GitHub, and then I can come in and actually look at it, see what their code is. So my goal is to actually download this, strip away everything that I don't like of both of these, and kind of create something from it, right? Don't reinvent the wheel, make a better wheel. Clean up the wheel, make the wheel yours. And I'm doing that through steps, and that's why I have this here. The PRD is saying this is what we need to do first before we start building anything. We're going to add in auth tokens and things like that, which basically what this is doing is it's just allowing it to connect to the Claude CL2. Basically, someone had come up with a really good session persistence. So if I sit here and see all of this, I have persistence in here, but this is an extension for VS Code. Someone had to build every single one of these buttons in. So we want to rebuild some of these, or just in this case, take them from someone else who's already built them, right? And the idea by the end of that is have something like that's clean there. Then we're going to move into actually implementing the front end. Then at the end, I'm actually implementing the workflow, because I think that's going to be the hardest. And at a certain point, Claude's going to run out of tokens. I might even want to start a whole other Claude process. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and nail that down and kind of work on it. I already did partially do that, right? So I asked Claude, hey, read this PRD and make sure you're up to speed on everything. And you understand it, right? And it's like, cool, got it. Here's the idea. I kind of liked it, but I wanted to make sure that it understood what I really wanted, right? I wanted to clean and edit stuff. I want to have control over files and routing. Other ones are annoying. I literally say that. I want to be able to automate things, swap files around. I just want to make sure you understand this. The abstract goal isn't a prettier Claude front end. It's a control surface that I can fluidly switch, right, between I'm driving or Claude's driving. That's such a good way to put it. I love that. And that's the idea, right? Is sometimes I want to edit every individual file, but sometimes I just want to automate the whole thing, but trust that it's automating it the way I want. So I'm going to say that's perfect. Let's go ahead and start. And in this case, again, this version of Claude Code is really nice because it's using my folders, my files, my text as these prompts, right? These are essentially just a bunch of prompts that are being fed into it. But in this case, I don't have to write this out. It's actually referencing that file, and it's it's not a stateless prompt. When I say stateless, right? Imagine your memory. You have something that's in memory, right? You downloaded it. It has a state on your computer. It's sitting there and it's held well. In this case, when you're sending prompts to Claude, as soon as you leave that conversation or you start to the next one, it's gone. It's stateless. It doesn't have its original structure in the same way. This makes a prompt exist permanently. So I can always reference it. I can redo it. I can tell Claude to check it out again. We can restart very quickly. That's why it's nice having markdown files, because they don't take a lot of memory, which is a really great one. They take less tokens than a PDF or a doc file, and they're really easy for AI to read. They are very well trained to understand markdown styles. And if I do want to do something with this markdown file, I can actually upload it to Google Docs or something like that, and it will turn all of these into formatting. Like it'll bold these, it'll make these bigger, because that's how markdown's designed to be. And that's what I'm going to make my front end work on. It's going to be allowing me to use markdown in that way. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to let this kind of rip through. As you can see, it's currently, let me actually explain this for some of you who aren't familiar with it. What's happening is it's going to enter plan mode, and there's plan mode and then there's execution mode. Usually it chooses on its own, but you can affect it and change it right here. It's going to go through and it's going to plan what our plan is, which is really good. This is what we want it to do, because now it's going to create individual plans off of this. And if you're using 4.6, right? So if I type /model, I can switch model. If you're using 4.6 or the default, which is usually 4.6, it actually also creates something called sub-agents, where it saves kind of time and says, hey, let me send an agent to go study the workspace. Let me send something else other than this main one to save on tokens to go study and fetch these things. And as you can see, the tool is going, oh, I need to do this. Let me look at this. Let me understand how all of this is structured, right? Claude is acting as the kind of, what do you call it? Manager of these agents automatically. And then it's doing some bash commands. So a bash is literally just, right, if I was to sit here and open up a terminal and type something in, say like, oh, fine, or if I could even run Claude again right here, it's just doing a command of some sort. So in this case, it's doing a bash command, which is just searching for, hey, look for structure this, right? This is where it's trying to find some sort of file. Hey, we're going to script lab. So it's actually going through, and this is why this is really important. I did this conversation inside of my actual workspace instead of a separate folder. Because if I did it in a separate folder, it wouldn't be able to pull context from my actual workflow, the things that's working. So as I'm building this front end, it's able to reference the thing that we're building the front end on, but only referencing it when I tell it to. I'm not saying, hey, go read everything here. I'm saying, hey, there's certain processes at certain steps, go reference parts of it, right? It's all about breaking it down and putting it into control. And it's doing that a couple different times here or there. It's doing a web fetch. It immediately went and it found this JSON package for the Claude Code UI, right? So what this is going to do is basically, how is it structured? How is it delivering it? Let's pull that from these people who've already done the hard work and actually get that together, which I think is nice. Oops, wrong one. From there, let's see, it's just doing a whole bunch of web fetches. So it's pulling individual files rather than the entire repo itself, which actually is better than what I told it to do originally. So that's pretty cool. Originally, I was just going to say clone the repo, but it makes a lot more sense for it just to search through the repo and then only download what we need or just straight up copy and paste it. Now it's sending another agent to go implement another part of it. It looks like it's doing a find command to look for some sort of parts inside of it. Let's see, Max. Yep, it's trying to find certain parts of the Claude Code web app, the actual aspect. And then it's going back and looking. So this is now onto the next GitHub repo, the other one that I wanted to pull from, and it's pulling for this. And as you can see, if we had been using Claude before and I just gave basic things, it kind of responds quickly. But because we have an entire PRD that it's following, right? And I said, hey, you can go and do your thing. It's going to go through and do all of this. And it might stop at certain points to ask for, help. But this is how you get Claude to work for a long time on its own and kind of trust its outputs. And of course, we can watch what it's doing, which is really nice. So I'll go ahead and post another video here soon on kind of what we are doing or what is actually being done. This is probably going to be thrown into session 2 of one of these courses. I'm kind of making these as I go and seeing where they go. You shouldn't have paid to see this. This should be free. That's the paid ones. I want to be more structured, have workbooks, be like an actual college course, which I do teach college courses. That's a real thing as well. So that's the other side of this. If you're feeling rushed or confused by anything I'm doing, don't worry. I'm going to break every little concepts of these down into individual courses for you to be able to really catch up and understand. But for those of you who already kind of understand all of this, I wanted to show what I do on a daily basis. This is something I work with every day. So yeah, have a wonderful time. See you, everyone. Or I guess I'll update you on the next session.